we'll get started in just a few minutes.
Hear from Dave, James.
Dave is not coming.
Oh, he's not?
No, Dave's not coming. Yeah.
So we didn't have anything like that?
No, Dave's not
Got an
coming.
email. I got an email.
Oh, he just gave his opinion.
He just did his bid.
He just gave his opinion.
Maybe he's going to just make us a personal loan. Maybe he's not feeling well today.
No, they're all playing golf. That's the problem.
Oh, that may be.
This is golf day.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to hear the
My
golf.
husband and Is Parker here?
No, Parker's wife hurt herself in tennis and had to go to emergency.
Diana?
So Gwen's going to talk.
Whoops.
Okay.
Badly?
I don't know. Okay, we'll get started. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. I think we've established that there's a quorum here first.
We can do that. Okay, starting over on Mike Fenn, Mike Fricitella. Here. Steve Kara Blevins is here. James Abbott.
Here.
Tricia Gregg.
Here.
Dennis Derrick. Here. There are 6 of us present. Dave Bernstein is absent.
Okay, thank you, Terry. Okay, first, thank you everyone for attending today's meeting. Today we're going to be doing or presenting a mid-year review of our financials as well as talk about our 2023 budget. I just want to remind everyone that this budget we look at is still in draft. Nothing's been decided. The board will have to make the final decision. So we're hoping for a respectable discussion, and feel free to ask questions. And then we'll start off with Gwen presenting the mid-year review and the budget.
And
Thank you.
out of courtesy, can they set her up on the cell
And
phone?
out of courtesy for everyone, can you please mute your cell phones? Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? It seems like I'm blasting.
You're blasting.
I guess Eddie maybe is back there. Thank you, Eddie. Eddie, as always, is on it. Jumping lights over here.
Give all forward ones. Hey, Eddie. Yeah, I'll make it a little easier. You can see.
Does that help him see the slides?
It's a little much, but
Okay, you see? Adequate.
okay.
Hi, I'm Gwen Cunningham with Budget and Finance. I'm not Parker Burns, and the person you were probably expecting, but he may be wandering in at any moment. Unfortunately, his wife hurt herself on the tennis court this morning, and she's getting an X-ray on the foot. But he may be joining us shortly. But if not, we will be soldiering on. As James mentioned, this is really just our first blush at looking at what the budget may look like next year. We're currently projecting where we think we're going to end 2022, and then we're projecting what we think 2023 will look like. So don't overreact to any of these numbers, please. This is just the first look. It opens up discussion, and there'll probably be a couple of more meetings before we finalize the budget and make a presentation to the board in October.
Gwen, If I can interrupt, I just want people to know we will also be broadcasting this. So be aware, mainly it'll be just showing the presentation and people speaking. Thank you.
Your Budget and Finance Committee currently consists of these 8 people there on the screen. We appreciate the board last week approving 4 new additions to Budget and Finance. It'll help. There's a lot of work, and we're glad to have the 4 newbies on board. So this year, when we took a look at, when we prepared the 2022 budget, we really took into consideration 4 key areas that we thought were really going to be risks for us in 2022. Irrigation should be no big surprise to anybody. We know we've got severe irrigation quality issues here that we're trying to get addressed. Oak tree mitigation, all the problems that we've had over the years with oak tree, and now finally having a plan to move forward in mitigating that issue. The lawsuit that again ties back to landscaping, and then inflation that everybody is dealing with. So looking at irrigation costs and what it's looking like for our 2022 budget as compared to what we think it's going to be for 2023, you can see, I'm sorry, the oak tree mitigation. I got it on the slide, sorry. Oak tree mitigation, we have the tree removal. As of June 30th, we've spent $171,850. And we don't expect that to change by the end of the year. We think we're done with what we're going to pay this year for the tree removal. Tree planting, we've done nothing in the first 6 months, but in the last 6 months of 2022, we expect to spend $30,105 on the new trees. So we'll have oak tree mitigation costs of $201,955 in 2022. So now looking at next year and what we want to do with oak tree, we expect to have additional tree removals that we expect will cost us about $120,750. And then the replanting of the trees, because that will be a continuous effort for a while, will be around $45,000. So we're expecting to spend for oak trees in 2023 $165,750, a little bit less than what we spent this year.
So Gordon, just a couple of comments.
Sure.
One, we should let the residents know that the additional cost for removing trees, before we can move forward with that, we'll have to go in front of the planning and zoning again. So we do expect that to start later this year or early next year, where we make a presentation to planning and zoning.
Do we have to do that every year, James?
For removal, we do,
Okay.
not for planting. So for removal, we're hoping to remove the rest of the trees and then be done with that in 2023. So we'll go one more time in front of the commission and then start replanting year after year, and we won't have to go in front of the planning and zoning for that. However, we will keep them updated as to where we are with the replanting. And invite them to come and see what it's looking like once we get these trees out next year.
Great. Thanks, James. Irrigation, another key issue for us this year. As of June 30th, on common area, we spent $45,193, and by the year end, we expect that will grow to $60,000 in repairing irrigation in the common areas. For the residential issues, we have spent through June $100,186, and by the end of the year, we expect that will grow to $160,000. So all total, we expect this year to spend on irrigation issues $220,000. For next year, the common area, we understand that it's been recommended that the entire boulevard be rewired for irrigation at a cost of around $175,000. So that's a common area item. And that there will be some incidentals around residentials and trying to get all the residential issues prepared for another $50,000. So we're expecting next year to spend about $225,000 on irrigation. the lawsuit, which I'm not going to spend a great deal of time talking about because we really can't, but we expect at the end of the year to be around 54,924, and next year around 37,494. Did you want to say something?
Yeah. So, regarding the proposed budget, I think this might be a little too high, because we're hoping this to be wrapped up before the end of the year. I think it might be good to have something in there, but as we move forward, that we should consider that maybe it should be a little less.
Do you think the year-end projection, the 54,000, is about right?
Yeah, I think the year-end projection is good, but we should consider maybe it only being maybe 10,000, but it's just food for thought. So, and the reason I'm mentioning this is so that as you see these numbers, not just a reminder, none of these are set in stone, right? So we want to make sure people don't leave this meeting thinking these numbers are all locked down. Thank you, Gwen, for letting me interrupt.
Sure, no problem. So when we started to look at expenses and revenue for next year, 2023, we took a look at the CPI, which is currently running at about 8%. Now, we didn't use 8% across the board for all segments. We just kind of used that, we just kind of took that into consideration over some of the expenses that we incur to give us a little guidance as to where we think expenses may go in 2023. So revenues, and I'm sure this is probably a little bit of an eye chart for you back there, so apologies for that. You do have a handout that has some revenue and expense information. If you don't have a handout, I think there's still a few left with Jackie if you want to pick one up. But for revenues, we expect to end the year at just shy of 5 million. I'm trying to read here in the dark myself on the eye chart. About 4,591,000. And we're proposing next year that we're going to need about 5,235,000. Now, when you look at the various areas, you can see we're doing well on our revenues. As far as the assessments, we're right on plan. Interest, pretty hard to kind of gauge where interest is going to go. Hopefully that will get a little bit better next year, but it's not a big number for us, and it's not going to move the needle. We've done really well on capital contributions because of the home sales. So we've exceeded what we expected this year in capital contributions, and we're hoping next year will be about the same. See a hand back there?
You said the budget this year is 4,500,000?
For revenues, yes.
It says 4, and this sheet said 4,000,008.
For revenue,
That's close. On assessment, 4.5.
Repeat the question.
yeah, I'm sorry, I'm looking at a really small print here. It is 4.8 million in total for revenues. My mistake. It's dark over here, so I'm not seeing it real well.
You could bring it up a little.
Any other questions on revenues? Pretty straightforward. It's the expenses that you're probably most interested in. A little bit. So expenses, 2022 budget versus the 2023 budget. These are the key categories: administrative, insurance, utilities, contracts, etc. By the end of this year for administrative, we expect to be over budget slightly, $178,560. That's really driven by the lawsuit. You can see for 2023, we expect our administration costs to go down to $145,000 and change, and that might even come down a bit more based upon the feedback from James. Yes, Beth?
Also with administrative, it was, the newsletter and the directory was way over budget this year. So that was,
And the directory will not incur next year. Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you. For insurance this year, by the end of the year, we're expecting to spend $121,000, and we've increased that to $149,000 next year. Everybody's insurance is going up. We're assuming ours will but it's hard to tell. We did get some guidance from the insurance committee on this, and, but it's a number, a best guess. Utilities, we expect to end the year 219,000. We're looking for a little bit of a bump next year to 222,000. Really, we will spend a little bit more than expected this year, and that's really driven by electrical costs. And we're expecting that electricity cost to go up a bit next year as well.
Can we just comment on electricity? So people should be aware that we spend over $5,000 a month for electricity for the clubhouse, fitness center, and the swimming pool. Right? So as we use the clubhouse, we should be thinking about the costs involved regarding lights and air conditioning. Right? So I think people need to be aware of how much it costs for some of the amenities that we have.
Can we do it about solar energy?
What was that?
Solar, do it about using solar energy.
What about using
Solar, have we thought
solar?
about solar energy?
Yes, we have discussed solar energy, and I did reach out to, so I do some tax work for a solar company, a solar management company. And I asked them to take a look at our place, and they use like Google Earth and all those applications where they can see our community. And they said it would probably be quite expensive to install solar panels, and that we probably don't have enough room to install them to generate the electricity we would need. But we haven't stopped looking at it, because I do believe it's something we should do. I think we all agree that using solar is probably a method to save a lot of money. But yes, to answer the question, yes, we have looked at that.
Contracts, we expect to end the year around 3.1 million, and we expect we're going to need a little over 4 million next year. And, you know, in contracts, there's a lot of contracts in that category. There's Comcast that goes up 4% every year because that's in the contract. We expect the management firm next year will require more money. You know, the security company is in there. All the contractual obligations are in there. And so we expect to see some increase in that in 2023. Repairs and maintenance, by the end of the year, we expect to be at by mid-year, we're currently at 551,000 compared to our budget at 342. That variance is really driven by irrigation, some tree removal. Those were unbudgeted items for this year, especially the irrigation. We did not expect to have the issues around irrigation that we've encountered, and so totally unbudgeted. So that's really thrown our numbers off completely. But next year, we're expecting to spend on repairs and maintenance $263,200. So we expect that to come down, and we'll talk a little bit later about why we think that's going to come down. Recreation center, we were looking to spend $54,500. We expect it will be more like almost $62,000 this year, and then next year we're going to need about $69,000 to keep the amenities going that we currently have. And then special projects, an unbudgeted item, which basically were some items that didn't get completed last year that leaked into this year, and it was $7,600 worth of that. And the final item is reserves, and we were expecting to grow our reserves by $333,500. We should end the year at $344,302, driven by capital contributions because the sales of the homes have been greater than we expected. And next year, we're looking at ending at $363,500 that we'll be bringing into our reserves. So total budget for next year, we're looking at $5.2 million as compared to just under $5.2 million where we expect to be by the end of this year. Another question?
The management contract, the wages are going up 25%?
You're questioning the contract item? That's a lot of items in there. Comcast, that goes up 4% automatically. You know, we're looking for a new management company. We don't know what that's going to look like. Next year, the RFP is out to different management companies, and the task force is looking at that to see, based upon what we have identified as our needs for a management company in 2023 and beyond, we're guessing as to what that cost might be. Landscape contract, there's all sorts of contracts in there, but probably management and Comcast are driving it.
So, Gwen, if I could,
Yes.
and I don't know if I missed this, but your title up there, PYE, that's projected year end, right?
Right,
As of
So
June
it's,
30th is the projected year end as of the mid-year.
so that's the projected year end for 12/30/2022,
correct.
right? That you based it on as of 6/30. Okay, and then I think his question was that it looks like there's going to be a 25% increase in contracts for year end, right? From 3 million to 4 million.
Well, 3.7 to 4.
317 to 4, right? So,
No,
I
3.7.
mean,
The budget was
you
3.7.
see, so that's $800,000 increase,
Yeah, okay.
right? And so it's really almost, it's a good 25% of the current, maybe 30%, but that was, I think, what he was asking, that there was,
It's about the line that says management, landscape management is 120, and the line management contract on site is 177,000.
So you're looking at the handout?
You look at the handout, that's what you're looking at.
Yeah, there's a different number for handout.
It's off in a way.
It says 3.7, James, here, the handout.
3713538 is the budget, but the projection is off. I'm sorry. I didn't notice that before.
So the year-end contract projections?
Yeah, you're in, because what happened was the management contract was a separate
I
item
see.
off of the
Yeah.
other contracts, and he didn't adjust the projection, with the
Yeah.
management contract, so that's why it's off.
Got it.
Really, we're pretty much, we're going to be over the meeting. Yeah, sorry guys, we were revising these up until the last minute,
Yes.
and much stuff got missed.
and
Thanks
just,
for questioning that to the catch. We'll get that corrected.
and just a reminder, as we said, we expected this to be a working meeting where we're looking at these things, asking questions, and adjustments will be made. And as we said, nothing's final yet, so, good call out, thank you.
Good catch, thanks. So some projects were, yes,
Where would you put something that's a potential expense, such as pickleball courts? Where would you put something like that?
we'll get to that in a sec. And here's some other potential items for 2023 that we've not contemplated in this initial budget, but they're things that have just been kind of kicked around amongst the community, and it would really be up to the board to give us some guidance as to how they want to proceed. So looking at tiki bar expansion, which we estimate to be about $30,000, some energy management, about $5,000, club support. That's basically giving a stipend to some of the clubs here within the Cascades, $2,500. Wrap utility boxes. If you drive around the city and you see those artistic wraps of usually they're animals on the utility boxes, would we want to do something here in the Cascades like that? A dog park within the Cascades for about $5,000. Some additional benches throughout the community for $15,000. And then district funding, the item that James put out in his message in the last Cascadian of $35,000. And then some other 2023 considerations. The pickleball courts, We're expecting that will be about $200,000, which we propose will come from Operation Savings Account. And then, Springview Loop has a paving issue or a water issue, not quite sure what the root cause of that is. We've got repaving funds established in the reserves, or allocated in the reserves for 2024. But if an engineering study of $5,000 can get that moving a little faster, we could possibly be looking at repaving Springview Loop in 2023 versus 2024. Not really sure how that's going to play out. Any questions so far around that?
Yes.
Yes.
The repaving of Springfield Loop and that engineering study, if somebody can go back into the computer, a study was made about 5 years ago about the cost of doing these things, and they help you out greatly.
We're aware of that, and we would, if there's a task force or however the board chooses to move forward with that, we certainly make them aware of it, and hopefully it's something that maybe they could rely on, who knows? But we are aware of that, but thank you. Anything else? So looking at reserves, in 2022, we were expecting $300,000 from assessments. A portion of the assessments come into reserves. So we were taking, historically, it's been 5% of your HOA goes into reserves. In 2022, we had to take a little bit more than that in order to fund the 6-year rolling plan for reserves. But we propose that in 2023, we'll be able to move that back to 5% if the board agrees with what we're proposing here. But we're looking good on the general reserves at $300,000. Our capital contributions, again, we're in excess of our plan by $11,000 because of home sales. Reserve interest, we're under a tad because who knows what interest is doing. And so we're falling slightly short of that. And our total reserve funding by the end of the year should be $344,000, which is $10,000 more than we thought it would be. Yes. Yes.
There's a number of reserve line items that have the remaining useful life of 0 or 1 year. What's being done to address those?
Can you give me an example? I'm not sure I follow the question.
Okay, a big example would be the papers outside.
Right.
That has a remaining useful life of.
Yep. So that's it, using the pavers as an example.
Yeah.
That is in the 22 budget for $350,000, I think we have allocated. So depending on what the task force recommends to the board and what the board chooses to do, that money may move forward for next year if it doesn't get done this year, or if they decide it's not necessary, we can push that down the road a few more years. We'll move that down the road and see what that means to the overall 6-year rolling plan for reserves. But right now, until we're told differently, it's in the 2022 plan. Just like another large item for 2022 reserves, equipment in the fitness room. And I know there's a task force looking at that, but I don't know if that will play out this year, next year, or not at all. Does that help you?
Yeah.
Anything else at this point? So this is just an overview of our bank balances. We project by the end of the year that our checking account will have $680,000 in it, and we began the year at $682,000, so that's a good thing. We are expecting our operating accounts, which are actually in 3 different banks. We expect to end the year at $120,796. And in our reserves, we have it spread out into 3 different banks, and we expect our reserve funding to end the year at $2.6 million, almost $2.7 million.
That's the total of.
Oh, I'm sorry, $1.6 million. Again, looking in the dark.
Are you looking to invest some of that in CDs?
We do have some of this in CDs, yes.
No, they're all in money markets right now. But we constantly look at what is being offered and what's out there.
Oh, I was thinking Valley was a CD, sorry.
No, it's all money markets.
We have in the past been in CDs.
To some
There's a difference between personal and commercial. Sometimes we get them offering commercial, which is great, and we try to keep on them. Other times consumers might have a better rate than commercial. So,
But we do take a look at it every month. Actually, FSR gives us some information on banks that they work with and what their CD rates are, and then we've done our own research as well. So right now, based upon what we just talked about, we are looking at an increase in our quarterly HOA of $70, and we're looking at a special assessment of $337, which would take off the table the funding for the oak tree removal, the replanting, and the irrigation projects. The oak tree removal and the irrigation should not be an ongoing operational expense that we have to consider every year in the plan. So that's why we're proposing that we put that into a special assessment and get it off the table. And just through those increases that we talked about, it drives our HOA up by about $70 per quarter per home. Yes.
And this is to James. James, you said we need to meet, committee needs to meet with the city on the next removal of trees.
Yes.
Actually, preparing for the cost of that in here, shown in 2022. Do you think there is a possibility that they would deny it? And I'm always saying, that they said, no, you can't do it that year. We would need that money that year.
Yeah, I don't think they would deny. Based on conversations with the parties, I don't think they would deny us. But it's more about...
It's more of a formality, you know?
Well, that we have a good replanting for the additional trees, right? So that would be it, and it would be, do they feel that we're not following this plan, the original approved plan, right? So if we digressed from the approved plan and started doing a bunch of other things, then they may say, wait a minute, you know, we approved the plan, you're not following it, we don't know if we can approve the next one. This is all just guessing, right? But we do feel that we've got a good relationship with them. We've got a good relationship with our landscape architect, who also has a good relationship with planning and zoning. And I feel we have a good relation with the city council. So I don't think they would say no, but it would depend on how our planting looks by year end, that they take the time to come and look to see what we've done for the first year, right?
In the assessment, and maybe look, it's a cost for the assessment, cost to us.
Yes.
To assess. Is that figured in the 337, or is there additional?
No, all of it's in the 337.
Yes.
In the very beginning, you had mentioned a guesstimate of $160,000 to rewire the entire Cascade Boulevard. That is based upon what? One bid? Or is there any bids? Because something at that cost, you need multiple bids, and that price may go down.
Terry or Tricia, how did you come up with that?
Well, actually, the only hard bid we have is right around 100, and that's from Juniper. But we have a few other sources that, when it comes to that point, that we're going to bring in to bid for this.
So could that, if it's lower, could that special assessment or quarterly?
I just hope it's enough, frankly.
So
We were told at one point, $100,000+ was a good start. So there is a little bit of guesswork in there, there's no doubt about that.
So this company that gave us supposedly $100,000 quote, is that because it's not working anything on the boulevard?
About
Or
100.
he just wants to upgrade the
No,
wiring?
100 zones, 160 zones do not work, and that's our common areas along the boulevard. It's 9 miles of wiring, and they have to do it station by station to figure out, okay, we'll rewire this part, and then downstream, what's happening, what do we have to replace down here? So it's a process that will be going on for a number of months. Once we get started and get the money. We haven't been able to do anything if we haven't had the money to start. So.
So just for the benefit of people watching, the question was about the special assessment and the cost for wiring for the sprinklers in the common areas, which right now we have an estimate of 165,000, and I would agree it would probably have to go out to bid. Again, this is all a working draft of everything, so you are right, Alan, it would have to go out for bid if we decide to pursue that solution. So, yeah.
It seems clear to me anyway that would be a reserve item.
So the question is, would that be a reserve item?
Technically, yes, because it's common area, it could come out of reserves. And if it did, and if it is around that 175,000 number, we would have to increase the amount of reserves that we pull in. We were hoping to go back to the usual 5%, but we would have to take it to about 12% of the HOA in order to fund the 6-year rolling plan and to stay above the minimum contribution based upon that plan that the state requires.
We've actually used some of the reserves to pay for what's happened so far. The golf course upgrades, not upgrades, just to get it working again. That all came out of reserves, and there's a few other items around that also came out of reserves. So we were able to tap into that just to help us get us through the year and get that golf course started.
So in other words, when you pay it either into.
Depends on which pocket you want to pay it out of. That's exactly right. Yep.
Correct.
And our thought process is it should be a one-time hit. That once we get that repaired and rewired, we should be done for a very, very, very long time, as long as it's maintained by a professional landscaping company. So that's why we were proposing a special assessment. We just didn't want to take 12% out of the HOA either. That's a big chunk. Yes.
I agree with everything you said. Well, one of the questions that I have about this irrigation thing so much, and has the board had any discussion over, I mean, you guys didn't cause the problem. You guys weren't able to inspect the folks. We have got a management company that we hired to manage this process for us, and they've been here quite a while, the one we currently have. We had another one before that. Has there not been any, I know we went after OGM, but my thing is, OGM's one thing, but we didn't even know about it in total. So Juniper came on when they started doing everything. What did our management company tell us about this problem 2 years ago?
I'll take that. So the question was, what is the management company doing and what were they doing about this, and a little bit about Juniper coming in and finding all this regarding irrigation. So as we work towards the new contract, and Dean, feel free to speak up, that is being addressed in the new contract to ensure that the whichever management company gets the contract, they take responsibility for the overall management of all the items within the Cascades, including irrigation, all vendor management.
So
right?
we're not responsible for it? Is that what we're saying?
No, what I'm saying is we can't really go back and try to fix what wasn't done regarding management, whether they did something or not. But it's more about looking forward and with whoever the new management company is, making sure they are taking responsibility to follow up with all the work that's being done within the community, right? So monitoring what Juniper does, right? We're not going to just rely on Juniper telling us everything's good. We're going to ask the management company to make sure they're doing their work as well.
I'm just saying I find it hard to believe that this is only an OGM problem. You know, and that nobody else bears any fiscal responsibility. And that if we felt we could just go after these one guys, we have to do hundreds of thousands of dollars in repair and irrigation It didn't all happen during OGM's contract, I'm sure.
Well, the failure to maintain it was definitely during the last 7 years.
Well,
So, but also there were, I'm sure, people before that could have helped.
Yep.
This is a 21-year-old
Just
system.
can't go back, you know?
It's a 21-year-old system. And through the years, at least in the 7 years prior that I have been on the board, the issue of this issue, if you're driving down and your grass is green, everybody's going, good, it's okay. You know, it's not that you're putting your head in your sand as a board or management, it's that you don't see problems. You have other ones that are popping up in your little fires and you're trying to put them out, whether it's through your landscaper or through the management company, hiring somebody to handle a problem. Under all ground, under the houses and everything, we're 21 years old. And when this is over, I know Gwen said, gee, I think we're finished. I'm not sure, I'm not blaming anybody. 3 more years, we're going to be 24 years old. So there will always be these type of problems, but you need to stay on top of it. You can't just say, you know, grass is green, it's good, we don't have to touch it. As reserves or even looking at our daily budget, we have to figure out what is going to pop up, what thing is going to go wrong that we've got to expect, and have that money there so we can do it. We're doing that now. We've always done that with reserves items. You sit there and making a 5-year or 10-year estimate on something. It's just that. It's an estimate. And then it won't happen before the 10 years. And then when we get to that 10 years, that's going to be the price. So there's always a lot of guesstimate, but we don't look around with X-ray eyes looking down in the ground and say, gee, this is old and ready to go. But it's no one fault, but it should be going forward, and I agree with Jim, that we, both management and board, stay on top of these issues as an aging community. I don't mean the people aging, I'm talking about the physical part of this aging. I would agree with Glenn, if you address the boulevard and bring it up to what it's supposed to be, you don't have to worry about it for another 20 years. But there are some other streets and other things that there's something under there waiting. Case of Boyd Breezy. We don't know what we're going to find under there. And do we pave it or do we fix it? And these are issues the board has to address constantly. And we deal with a problem right now. Going back to say who did it, I agree with you, but I don't know the answer. I think you got to move forward and address it.
Yeah, so we can end it and we'll move forward with Gwen's continued presentation. Oh, I'm sorry, George.
I'm looking at the reserve study. I don't see any reserve line for irrigation.
No, it was never considered an asset, never part of the reserve study from the beginning of the Cascades. There was always, I think, an expectation by the reserve company that irrigation is standard down here, that there's usual maintenance going on that's being covered by the operations, and that there wasn't neglect that warranted this huge amount of spending that was necessary. So earlier this year, the board voted to move common irrigation into the reserves to help take the pressure off of the operation funds. And but still, an unbudgeted item, whether you're looking at it from operations or reserves. But going forward, it will be in reserve. So when we do another study in 4 years, it will be one of the new items that we'll present to the reserve company and make sure that they include that in their study and that we've got it identified in our, actually, it's a 50-year spreadsheet for the life of all of our assets.
Can I ask one question about the reserve study?
Yeah,
When was the last time we had it?
last year.
Last year?
Yes, so we do it every 5 years.
It was on site?
Yes, they came on site and gave us the report updating all the assets, including the new ones that we have.
So the question was, when was the last reserve study done? And it was done last year, and it's done every 5 years on site
By an independent company.
by an independent company.
Okay, moving on. So this is just a brief history of our assessments at the Cascades from 2005 on. So you can see that back in the day, we were at $592.66 quarterly. Interesting that sometimes we had some interesting assessments, but we have because of just expenses and the growth of the amenities, we've had to increase. Kind of stands the reason. But when you compare us against other communities, we're still looking pretty good. This was done a few months ago, and obviously we don't know what these communities are looking at in 2023 for their assessments, if they can hold the line, or if they have to increase their assessments or not. But if we increase our assessment, we're still looking good as compared to everybody except our friends next door at Kings Isle. But again, we don't know what they're contemplating, what anybody's contemplating for next year. So again, this is just our first blush, based upon where we think we're going to end the year and what we think we're going to need next year. Having a good discussion, getting good feedback helps us go back and do a refresh. And we'll probably have a couple of more meetings before we finally present a final proposal to the board. Our target is in October.
Thanks. One comment too, that if you go back to the slide that shows the quarterly rates, no, the previous slide that shows how much.
This one?
No. The one that has, the comparison, the one with the comparison. Yeah, the next one. Yeah, that one. So right now we're thinking it might go to 1105, right?
Yes.
Yes.
The $70 quarterly increase.
Right, and we had those other items listed, benches, so forth, tiki guards, and all of those. If we were to include all of those, it would be an additional $20 per quarter to include those. So if we did approve those, it would go to 11 and 25, I believe. So that's, I just want to give some food for thought for everyone when we're looking at these.
If I could make a comment on that as well, if you don't mind. A lot of those communities are going to be hit with something incredible because when their developers leave, right now the developers are contributing something toward it. And then it's going to fall back to the homeowner. So it's going to be a massive association fee soon for them.
PGA's closed.
PGA's done, but the
Kings Island's closed, and who else?
No, I think she was just commenting on the newer ones.
The newer ones.
When they turn, you know, when you look at those quarterly fees as of right now, they're going to be, once they turn it over, it's going to go up significantly. So people buying into the new ones, they're probably going to be surprised at the change in the dues once they take over. So it just makes us look even better compared to the new ones.
Some people at Kings Island pay 3 different communities for all the different services.
8 different payment services.
It's weird, isn't it?
8 different corporations make up the master system, and I know because I was on the board of directors for 3 years.
That's got to be confusing for folks.
Very confusing.
Yeah.
And that's about the lowest about. But they're not, the highest is that much different.
No, that's true.
Thank you. Sure. And do it from here, or do I go back there?
Give them up here.
I don't know.
Oh, that's great.
And he was back there, I didn't see him.
Thank you, that was great.
Very good.
Okay, thank you, Gwen and Budget and Finance for putting this together.
That's the rest of the team over there.
Are there any follow-up questions or comments that people would like to make? Yes, Alan, if you could do the mic. I think any further questions, so everyone, the benefit of everyone, both here and online, if you could come to the mic to speak, that would be great.
Still on the, Alan Portnoy, 209 Northwest West Runway. This $160,000, I'm sorry to say, it irks me. Has anybody from FSR office, the office, or from the board, when the sprinkler system's going on Cascade Boulevard, have they seen the sprinklers actually working? Because right now, we have Juniper here since January, I believe. The boulevard grass is terrible, not because of the 5 weeks of no rain. It's all dead along the right-hand side of the street, of the sidewalks. That is not a sprinkler issue. Something has to be done. They're not putting sod over it. They're not taking care of anything along the boulevard. Has anybody watched to see if the sprinkler system is going on every 2 days or every 4 days?
To my knowledge, most of it is not working. And to put sod down and then have it die makes no sense. We know we're gonna have to replace the sod once we get everything working. But right now, we haven't paid them a dime to repair this, so.
Good afternoon, Phil Banishek. My question involves the lawsuit. We're spending, what's the projection for this year on a lawsuit? $50,000, $60,000? 54. Thank you. And 37 for next year. My question is, what's in the budget in terms of how much you anticipate receiving in terms of the settlement? What we're fighting over is $110,000, the last payment for December 21. If you don't have some number of revenue calculated in there, then what you're basically saying is you're going to spend order of magnitude $90,000 with no offset coming in. So what were you planning on doing with respect to income other than 110? It's going to go to mediation at the latter part of this week, from what I hear. If the mediator does what he normally does, he's going to go 50-50, 60-40. So you're going to get $60,000 and you spent $55,000 this year. The net gain sounds like $5,000. Then what is your calculation for next year? You're going to spend $37,000. This, I assume, has to do with the lawsuit going against OGM. If you aren't going to get $50,000 to $100,000 with a high degree of certainty, then why are you spending this much money on legal funds? $37,000 is a lot of money. This year we have zero budgeted, and we spent $55,000 from the EA. Is that about right? Yeah. So you got to break even for this year. 5,000 to the plus, maybe, after you get through the mediator. The suit against will not necessarily go to a mediator, will it? It'll probably go to a judge, a jury. And you don't know what you're going to get. What if you end up getting zero? It's $37,000 out of our money. That's the equivalent to about $40 a household.
So
We can't comment
You've got
on,
those 300.
we cannot comment on this litigation because
You
it's
can't
on.
comment on what you forecast.
No, we can't. We cannot
Yes, you
comment.
can.
No.
You have to let us know what you think you're going to get so that we understand whether you're making a good business decision.
Again, any comment, any discussion is between the board and the attorney on what we think. We cannot comment on it at this time, based on guidance from our attorney. So,
Your budget can, in terms of numbers, you have to let us know what you're gambling on. You're basically gambling with our money. 50,000 this year and 37 next year. You can't say it's confidential. There's no relationship here between the attorney and us in terms of how much money we might get.
Well, I would always say this, not being a lawyer. I'm guessing this. If I were just arguing, we would have said, gee, we could lose 160 and we put it in. Only admitting we think we could lose 160. Our lawyers, I'm sure, would advise us, don't show any of your cards. You know, and I get that, but I am as nervous as you that there is a possibility that we could lose a lot of money.
There's a definite downside risk, and there's no comfort in what you're saying, that zero is what we're going to say is our budget. It's not a good way to do a budget. This is contingency, and you need to plan on it and let us know. Otherwise, you have to say, I can't put in the 37,000 for next year. You're using 37 for the suit against OGM defamation, correct?
That's just the current amount that's put in the budget, but it hasn't been decided yet, right? This, as we said, this is a working meeting, trying to give transparency to the
I'm asking for
community.
transparency.
Yes, and right now, and I mentioned it early on, that I think that might be too much for 2023. And that's all I want to say.
Can I?
The other part of it, Phil, is that we did not file a suit against OGM. They filed a suit against us. We
Oh, I
had
understand
no
perfectly
choice
well.
than to defend ourselves in that suit, and that's where the money's going. Currently, there's been no,
If you stop it at the chase for the 110, you're right, that's against us. But the fact is, you're going after OGM to get another sum of money for defamation. That's a flat out gamble.
and
You
again,
don't know what you're
we
getting.
can't comment on that because
Then let me ask you this. When it comes to the final budget, are you going to show us what your anticipated numbers are? Because the budget is going to be drastically miscalculated because you don't have the anticipated income that you might get from the 110. You get 55 out of it, 60,000 out of it, and you've got a projected $50,000. It's an open situation. It's an area where we shouldn't have gone to. We should have settled this thing at the get-go, but that's neither here nor there. But I want to know, will you project how much income, settlement money, you might get after you go to mediation and you have a better valuation if you sue OGM for defamation?
again, Phil, the lawyers are handling the strategy going forward with this mediation. That's all we can say. The lawyer has a plan. We don't know all the details. He's doing what he believes is going to get us to a settlement in our favor, to our best advantage. And beyond that, we really can't say anything.
My second concern is, I pulled the balance sheet for last year. We had $670,000 of owner's equity. It's the same equivalent that you have in the cash account. It's our cash operating surplus. They're basically one and the same. There's virtually no difference between the two of them. You're projecting a loss this year somewhere north of $250,000, correct? Biggest, 270,000. I can't tell. What's the EA projecting?
I don't have no law.
Who has the schedule for how much we're going to lose this year on the EA?
It's around 200,000.
It's around 270,000.
Yeah.
Okay,
I don't
now-
know, it's over 200,000.
Here's the problem with this. The equity is 670,000. We've earned this over the past 15 years. Bit by bit, 20,000 here, 30,000 here. It's accumulated, so we now have 670,000. We agreed this year to use that money towards paying for the trees. We're paying for the trees and we're going to a deficit, and that's okay. That's going to take the homeowner's equity down from 670,000 to around $400,000. Now, if you go through next year and you're going to have a special assessment, and from what I heard at the last budget meeting, you're going to take the pickleball courts and you're going to run that through savings. Well, that 400,000 is now going to drop down to 200,000. Remember what our CPA said? He wanted us to have, order of magnitude, 2 months of operating surplus. That's $800,000 by my calculation. And what you're doing in 2022 is dropping in 250,000 loss, and then you're going to throw another loss in because you're going to use the pickleball money, it's gonna be 200,000, I actually think it's gonna be more than 200,000 because of rating issues. You're gonna drop our operating surplus and homeowners' equity to below $200,000. And I'm gonna say that is a red caution, because you can't drop down that low. And then we do have a problem with a hurricane issue. We'll be in deep trouble. But now becomes the decision, why are we using a special assessment to do trees, which was done in 2022, because we couldn't get it to in 2021. And then the next year, we're using it as a special assessment. Why didn't we switch horses in our accounting methodology if it was done one way one year and then done another way for next year? Well, why isn't the budget taking care of, first you have wants and needs. We need to get the trees cut down. We want the pickleball courts. Wouldn't we be better served taking care of it through our savings the same way we did it in 2022 and do it in 23?
All of those will be continued discussion as we move forward. This is the first year that we're doing a mid-year review and discussion. Normally, this meeting would not happen until around October, when the board meets to discuss the next year's budget. So we're a little bit ahead, which we all believe is a good thing to do, to share where we are and where we're starting. So all of what you're saying is going to be looked at. As far as why we wanted to do a special assessment for the additional trees, instead of either taking out of savings or putting it as part of the budget, is because we've heard people say that if you raise the dues, then to take care of these trees, then how do we know you're going to lower it the following year? So that was the reason it was done this way, to say this is a one-time expense to take the trees out, and that it doesn't impact the monthly dues or the quarterly dues, so people don't feel like we're going to leave the dues the same the following year.
Well, here's the confounding thing. We're not going to have the repairs done to the driveways, which cost us a lot of money, because we took care of basically 750 trees. We only have 400 to go. So we're going to have a very low expense there. I was expecting a savings that we would use as an offset to spend on the tree removal and the replacement. Those you need. You need them. So there's a big difference between what you need, because it's mandated by the city, and we've got to complete the project, and we've got to put in these new trees to replace that stuff. I understand that. But I'm confounded when I see that the HOA fees might go up $70. And we didn't get the savings from the reduction because we don't have the repairs going on as we had once before. We don't have the trimming going on as we once had before. So there's a lot of stuff that we aren't doing now, but I'm not seeing the savings. Now, I haven't gotten a good look at the EA to figure it out, but it doesn't compute. It doesn't right.
Thank you. And these are good questions. And as we continue to meet with Budget and Finance each month, these things will get looked at and refined as we get closer to when we have to approve the budget for 2023. Any other questions? Any comments from the board? Any final? Yes.
It's just well, they always doing a great job at financial committee. You guide us, tell us what we have, what we could do, and how far we go. And I always say, at the moment, this is probably the most people we've ever had in a station. But it still seems to be a shame that once we, as a board, and I don't know if we're going to end up at 730 increase from the 337 on one time to 200, I don't know, but something's going to change. And we're going to hear, all of us, how bad this is. And yet, when you look at the percentage of people here, some of them would rather put out for cars or something than worry about their money. To me, of all the board meetings we have, this may be one of the most important, because we're thinking about how we're going to spend yours and our money. And thank those who came out, because obviously you could have done something else. It always bugs me when we have all these committees put their minds to doing this, trying to make this better as well as the board, and nobody comes out to ask or question or agree until it's all over and the screams and yells, this happened. And not here. Well, everybody I know knew it was a special, it was a board, and people asked me, how much is it gonna? I said, I'm not at the meeting, just
Maybe
make it.
you should have said it's a budget meeting, maybe people would have been emailed it.
Yeah, and we may not reach everybody in East, but we reach more than the people that are here. I'm just making a general comment. The fact that you are here, I am very happy. We have done a couple of these every year, and sometimes have 12 people. This is a good increase, but the reality is, when we talk about people's money, you want to come out and you're not here, but then you're going to scream about it. Whether you don't vote, in an election, you don't complain. Similarly here, you got to come out, you got to make your statements, and because there's a lot of education, Phil just said something, it's food for thought for the board. It helps. But if nobody's coming forward, we sit here and 7 people, well, we have to make a decision.
So, I counted the people in the room, and eliminating budget and finance, I come up with 20 people, right? When I eliminate budget and finance. There are, I think, at my last check, there were 13 people online watching, right? So, I think broadcasting will get more people to watch, and we're working towards that, to be able to broadcast meetings so people can see. Because there are some that may not be able to make it out here, or they're snowbirds and want to be able to watch when we're there. So we're trying to make progress in getting more people invited or to come. But Mike is right about the people that do attend these and get involved. It's a very small percentage. And the board does the best it can to make sure, we get people involved, but it's probably a tough fight because it's not just the Cascades, it's every HOA, right? It's just the way it is. So I can understand that. But again, the board is doing its best. This is we've only seen this for a couple days. The budget finance has been working hard on it, right? And we'll continue to review, make comments, and send back feedback. And by the time we have that final meeting, I think people will probably be more, I'll say, satisfied, appreciative of what we're trying to get done and where we are. And we'll have more information by then. Because we're only at mid-year and trying to make decisions for next year. We've got, 5 more months to go, and maybe only 3 before we really have to have something approved by the board. And I think a lot will happen in those 3 months. Yes, Phil?
One other question. I saw that on the back of the schedule that was given out, and look through the front. Where exactly is the $200,000 for the pickleball court budget? It should be on here somewhere on our expense lines, and I don't see it.
So the question is, where is the pickleball, the 200,000 on that handout? Does budget?
No, it's not budgeted, because we're going to use savings from it.
It still has to pass through the P&L. It has to pass through the P&L, and it'll drop into homeowners' equity.
When
and
we
create a-
distort the calculation of the assessment. So
No,
we
no,
didn't
no.
want it, we did not want to include it in the budget, because that schedule figures out what the assessment per quarter would be. When we put 200,000 in it, then it's going to increase the quarterly assessment.
Okay, let me explain it this way. We're going to spend $5.2 million. We're going to get revenue coming in for 5.2. Your expenses, it's okay if you showed, right now it shows 5.2 with the expenses. It's okay if you showed 5.4 million, which reflects the fact that you say, I know we're going to spend another 200,000 for the pickleball court, and that's
If
okay.
it's approved, we'll put it in as a special project and we'll manipulate it so it doesn't impact quarterly assessment. But right now, it has been approved by the board.
Okay, but it needs to be on the expense line so that you budget, your budget revenue is 5.2, your budget expense is 5.4, you're expecting to spend over 200,000 more than you take in, and that's okay.
It's gotta be approved by the board, it's a special project.
You gotta
And
show,
it's
you
gotta be approved by
gotta
the
show
board.
the laws.
Yeah, I agree.
You think that.
Excuse me, several years ago, this happened, and it was not on the budget committee. And what we did is we had a budget line that says, I don't know the exact words, money from prior years, money from reserve, so we showed the expense and we showed the income.
Yeah, that's what we do with, we have a section that we do not include on the budget, but in the EA, which is the spreadsheet that we maintain, it's under special projects, if it gets approved by the board.
So this is good feedback, right, regarding the spending of money for pickleball and whether it's coming out of savings or not. How will it be presented to the residents? That is still being worked on. This is just the first draft. So we're not going to get everything exactly as we want it as of today, and we'll continue to work towards that as we have discussions on how we want to use those savings.
James, we also, a couple meetings back, I made the motion and the board passed it to put money aside for new pickleball courts. And I'm not saying it in the budget.
Because we do, the thought is right now, is that pickleball, new courts would be an investment for the community. So what do you do with your savings? That's you spend it on investments of your home, right? It's the same thing, we're using the savings because it's for an investment, not to fix them.
So
That was
Dee,
what, that kind of like our conversations that were going around, and that's why it was decided, at least for now, that it'll be a savings account, coming out of the savings rather than budgeted for. So Dean, as what you said, a line item, because the thought was, well, we'll have to start budgeting for this so we would have enough funds to pay for the pickleball. We're saying we have the money already in our savings account, why not use the savings? That's just what our proposal is. You guys can shoot it down, it's your decision.
You just remember what I said, you're gonna bring our, operating savings down to a dangerously low number. We're at $670,000, it will drop down to the $200,000 to $250,000 range, because you have substantial loss this year, which took care of the trees and, irrigation issues.
I know I've looked at it over the past couple of days, it's not as severe as what you're saying, but I did bring my laptop with me, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head.
But it's a good observation, that we do need to keep in mind as we continue the different iterations of the budget.
I'm just gonna say that, I'm gonna go by our past experiences, not because of the board, just in general, what happened in construction in Florida. We're in a process where before we can start physically doing a pickleball court, we need to do a building move, a shed move. And, we're not even at the point where we're talking about pouring a piece of cement or putting in an aluminum sub. What I'm about to say, not the board's fault, but the way it moves, and we work in monthly most of the time, and when you work with the city, they don't exactly move quickly. That's actually a factor of slowing. We may not get to point A to February. I'm being realistic. I went through this with the original pickleball court. How long it took us to get just ground broken was far after we had started the planning and agreeing that we were doing it. You might not see, and just in my opinion, that the first ground dug in March or April of next year. It's very possible. And that might change our finances between now and then. And we want to be prepared for it, but I just don't have the confidence that it's going to be happening tomorrow, and that we're going to be broke or something. So I would disagree that it is pulling money down. Part of the reason why you're doing assessments, increasing the due. I think, I'm not exactly sure the numbers are right, but that will help offset some of it. Part of the job here, and Phil said, and needs and wants. Well, we have a tough job up here. We want to keep up with those communities in the sense of what the problem. We have all of that amenities. If you have not gone shopping like some of us have, and I have, looking for a home outside here, nobody has the amenities. They have beautiful new homes. And the two things that stopped us from buying was we were going from the average hear about 5,000 taxes. The average where we went was 12,000 in taxes. The average fees were at 1,400 while the builder was there. And we know that that's been jumped. So that tells us we have a value, but we have to maintain it. So the decision comes in, it needs to pull trees down there, costing us money. And it's actually a need to keep up. And part of it is what we know where we go is the couple. It could have been something else that we need to do. But that's the only thing left we can. We can't build a bigger pool, that's not gonna change it. Forbidden gym is not gonna change it. That is the last piece, that's the last amenity that we can grow and keeps us up with the Joneses. We're not gonna compete with 27 courts at one of the places. But if we have enough, people who come in here are asking for them when they buy, we will maintain the numbers of what our house prices are, and what we're gonna be able to sell it for, what my kids are gonna be worth. And that's why we do it. If you use no amenities at all, somebody came to me and said, I don't use any amenities. Jokingly said, you should have lived in a condo. This is all about amenities, not your houses. Houses are old, it's supposed to be a fortune to redo this.
If I can jump onto this. So, we all have our opinions on how we should spend the money. Some people want pickleballs, others want benches. They want more benches. Or they want tiki bar expansion. Everyone has an opinion on where the money should be spent and should not be spent. We're not going to get everyone to agree. But I would like to ask residents to talk to their district rep. Talk to anyone on the board. Go talk to people on budget and finance. And share your opinion, right? I know a lot of this comes up on board meetings, but I'm asking, don't wait for a board meeting to ask these questions. Take the time to meet with all of us and say, hey, I want to spend a half hour with you and share my feedback, right? Versus bringing it up here. Of course you can bring it up here, but it puts everyone on the spot now. We have to be thinking about what you're asking. When if you would have met with us prior to a board meeting, we could have had a good one-on-one discussion and saying, this is how I feel, this is how you feel, and be done with it. Because all of these are good questions and concerns. But take the time to speak to us outside of a board meeting, right? So that we can focus the board on things that need to get approved and get done. Because your opinions matter. Right? But if we take the board meeting to have everyone discuss their opinion, the board meeting is going to go 4+ hours. And we still won't get anything done because we'll still probably have difference of opinions. Yes?
Shouldn't all the reps have meetings then with their district?
Yes, they should be having meetings, but you should also be having the one-on-one meetings as well, right? I mean, I have people call me and they want to discuss something, and I think it's great. And then we get together and we talk, and we're able to be more open and share both sides, right? Yes, you can do this at board or at district meetings as well, but even then, we schedule a district meeting and then it doesn't work for a person's schedule.
But not all the reps have meetings.
Well, then I would continue to remind each board member to have meetings. And I know I'm due for one, so I will get one on the schedule.
I would just say this, every November, first week of November, I try to hold, to do 2 a year, November and then through March. Because I want to try to get as many of the snowbirds there, because they want to vote, they want to ask questions. Unfortunately, if we end up, and I'm not going to argue with voting in October because we need to get a budget vote, we're really still going to be talking to a smaller percentage of the people about it. A lot of people begin on the phone and call, but I know when I was a snowbird at one time, a lot of the stuff that came in the mail was hard to understand, couldn't get involved, so we were less computer oriented in those days. So yeah, we should have a meeting with, as I do, we should have, I do 2 a year. But my fear is, I want to get to the maximum amount of my district, and that's going to happen in November. We vote in October, they're really not going to get a say in it. That's me just giving you my personal opinion on when we should be voting, is when the maximum people are here to hear their complaints, to hear what they say. And that's just my opinion. Do it twice a year, and I get most people lot of people who have just cut down. I mean, October, I don't get, if I do it in October, I don't get that many.
Okay. Thanks, Mike. Any other questions from either the board or the audience? If not, we can make a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion.
Seconded.
All right, move to second, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone online, and have a great day.